Picture this. It's 1967. The Beatles just released Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The summer of love is in full swing, and deep inside Chevrolet's engineering department, a small group of men are creating what would become the most legendary American racing machine ever sold to the public. But if you thought the 1967 L88 Corvette was just another high-performance option, you're dead wrong. In the next few minutes, you'll discover 20 jaw-dropping secrets about the ultimate Corvette that General Motors tried desperately to keep hidden from the public. From the engine that was so powerful they had to lie about its horsepower, to the bizarre deletion that nearly killed test drivers, including one fact so scandalous that Chevrolet executives ordered all evidence destroyed. The horsepower lie that fooled everyone. General Motors officially rated the L88 engine at 430 horsepower. But here's the secret they didn't want you to know. Independent dyno testing revealed the truth. This beast was producing between 550 and 570 horsepower at the flywheel. Why the massive deception? Simple. Insurance companies were already targeting high-performance cars with astronomical premiums. The federal government was making noise about regulating muscle cars, and NASCAR had power-to-weight restrictions that Chevrolet wanted to circumvent. But here's the kicker. Chevrolet engineers later admitted they picked 430 horsepower because it was conveniently 5 less than the L71 option that cost $437. They figured buyers would choose the higher-rated engine and leave the L88 for serious racers. The deception worked perfectly. Only 20 buyers ordered the L88 in 1967. Those 20 people got a barely disguised race car that could embarrass Ferraris and Porsches, costing 3 times as much. Even today, original L88 engines regularly dyno well above their supposed rating, proving Chevrolet's lie was actually a gift to performance enthusiasts who knew what they were buying. The fuel that almost killed the program. The L88 required 103-octane racing fuel to run properly. But here's what Chevrolet didn't advertise. Regular pump gas would literally destroy the engine within minutes of operation. The 12.5-to-1 compression ratio was so extreme that anything less than premium racing fuel caused devastating detonation. Spark plugs would shatter, pistons would crack, connecting rods would bend. The high-octane fuel wasn't just recommended, it was absolutely mandatory for survival. But here's where it gets weird. 103-octane fuel was only available at select service stations, usually near racetracks or specialized performance shops. This meant L88 owners had to plan their driving routes around fuel availability, like military operations. Some owners carried 5-gallon cans of racing fuel in their trunks for emergencies. Others simply parked their cars during the week and only drove them on weekends to racetracks. Chevrolet knew this would limit the car's appeal, which was exactly what they wanted. The L88 wasn't designed for casual Sunday drives or grocery store runs. It was a homologation special, built specifically to qualify the Corvette for professional racing competitions worldwide. The aluminum heads that changed everything. The L88 was the first production Corvette to feature aluminum cylinder heads. These weren't just weight-saving components. They were technological marvels that gave the L88 a massive advantage over iron-headed competition. The aluminum construction saved 75 pounds compared to iron heads, dramatically improving the car's weight distribution and handling characteristics. But here's the secret. The aluminum heads featured rectangular intake ports that flowed 30% better than any other production head available at the time. The ports were hand-finished at the factory by skilled craftsmen, essentially giving every L88 owner custom racing heads right off the assembly line. The combustion chambers were precision-machined to exact specifications, ensuring perfect compression ratios. The valve seats were specially hardened to withstand the extreme pressures generated by the high compression pistons. These heads were so advanced that independent engine builders couldn't match their performance for years. Even more shocking, Chevrolet used different casting numbers for L88 heads in different years, with the 1969 version flowing even better than the original 1967 design. Today, original L88 aluminum heads are worth more than entire engines from other muscle cars. They're that revolutionary and valuable to collectors and racers alike. the carburetor that broke all the rules. Sitting atop the L88 engine was a massive 850 CFM Holley 4-barrel carburetor. For perspective, most 427 cubic inch engines used 600 CFM carburetors. The L88's carburetor was absolutely huge, and for good reason. This engine was designed to rev beyond 7,000 RPM, far higher than any other production big block of the era. The massive carburetor was specifically calibrated for the L88's unique characteristics by Chevrolet's top fuel system engineers. Chevrolet engineers spent months dyno testing different jet sizes, power valve ratings, and accelerator pump configurations to maximize performance across the entire RPM range. The final calibration was so precise that changing even one jet size would hurt performance measurably. But here's what made this carburetor truly special. It featured mechanical secondaries that opened instantly under full throttle, delivering maximum airflow when the engine needed it most. Most street cars used vacuum secondaries that opened gradually, but the L88 was built for racing, where instant throttle response was critical for competitive advantage. The carburetor was so large and powerful that it required a special aluminum intake manifold designed specifically for the L88 application by GM's racing department. The transmission that could handle the torture. Every L88 came with the legendary M22 Rock Crusher 4-speed transmission. This wasn't optional equipment. If you wanted the L88 engine, you got the Rock Crusher, period. Why? Because no other transmission could survive the L88's brutal torque output under racing conditions. The M22 used straight-cut gears instead of helical gears, making it incredibly strong but also incredibly loud. Owners described the sound as rocks tumbling in a cement mixer, hence the unforgettable nickname. The gear ratios were perfectly spaced for racing, with a close ratio setup that kept the engine in its power band through every shift. But here's the secret Chevrolet didn't advertise. The M22 was based on a transmission originally designed for medium-duty trucks and commercial applications. The gear sets were forged instead of cast. The case was thicker, and every internal component was built to withstand punishment that would destroy lesser transmissions instantly. The synchronizers were bronze instead of the typical brass, providing smoother shifts under extreme conditions. Even the shifter was special, featuring a unique shift pattern and heavy-duty linkage designed specifically for racing use. Today, original M22 transmissions are almost as valuable as L88 engines themselves among serious collectors. The brakes that stop the unstoppable. The L88 came standard with J56 heavy-duty disc brakes all around. These weren't typical passenger car brakes by any stretch of the imagination. They were racing specification components adapted for street use. The front calipers used 4 pistons instead of the typical single or dual piston design, providing massive stopping power and better heat dissipation under extreme conditions. The rotors were thicker and used special iron that could withstand repeated heating and cooling cycles without warping or cracking. But here's what made these brakes truly special. The proportioning valve was calibrated specifically for the L88's weight distribution and performance capabilities. This meant the front and rear brakes worked in perfect harmony, providing maximum stopping power without locking up prematurely. The brake pads were a special compound developed specifically for racing use, providing incredible bite but requiring higher operating temperatures to work effectively. This meant the brakes actually got better as they heated up during hard use, unlike typical street brakes that faded under hard use. Some L88 owners complained that the brakes felt weak during normal driving, not understanding they were designed for extreme racing conditions. On the racetrack, these brakes were virtually unstoppable, allowing L88 Corvettes to outbrake cars, costing 3 times as much consistently. The suspension that defied physics. The L88 came with mandatory F41 heavy-duty suspension components. This wasn't just stiffer springs and shocks thrown together hastily. It was a complete suspension system designed specifically for racing use by Chevrolet's finest engineers. The springs were wound from special alloy steel and heat-treated to precise specifications that exceeded military standards. The shock absorbers featured multiple valving circuits that provided different damping rates for different driving conditions and track track surfaces. But here's the secret that even most Corvette experts don't know. Zora Arkus Duntov, the father of the Corvette, personally calibrated every L88 suspension setup at GM's proving grounds. He spent countless hours at the proving grounds, fine-tuning spring rates, shock settings, and anti-roll bar configurations to create the perfect balance between handling and stability. The front anti-roll bar was thicker than standard, while the rear bar was actually smaller to promote controlled oversteer under racing conditions. The suspension geometry was modified slightly to provide more negative camber under load, improving cornering grip significantly. Most amazing of all, Duntov hid additional suspension mounting points in the frame for racers who wanted to experiment with different setups. These secret mounting points weren't documented anywhere, but were there for serious competitors who knew where to look. The interior that wasn't there. One of the most bizarre aspects of the L88 was what it didn't have rather than what it included. The heater and defroster were completely deleted from every single car. Not optional, deleted entirely. If you ordered an L88, you were driving without heat, period. Chevrolet claimed this was for weight savings, but the real reason was more sinister and calculated. They wanted to discourage street use and make the car as uncomfortable as possible for daily driving situations. The heater deletion saved $97.85 from the purchase price, but it made the car virtually undrivable in cold weather conditions. Some owners tried to install aftermarket heaters, but the L88's unique engine bay layout made installation nearly impossible for most mechanics. The air conditioning was also prohibited, not just deleted from the options list. You literally could not order AC with the L88 option under any circumstances. Same story with the radio and other comfort amenities. Chevrolet figured anyone buying a homologation special for Trans Am racing didn't care about music or climate control systems. They were mostly right, but it still meant choosing between ultimate performance and basic human comfort during operation. The engine that ate itself alive. The L88 used a solid lifter camshaft that was absolutely brutal in its specifications. Duration numbers don't tell the whole story about this mechanical monster. This camshaft was designed for engines that would spend most of their operational time above 4,000 RPM under racing conditions. At idle, the engine sounded like it was trying to tear itself apart from the inside. The overlap was so extreme that the engine would barely idle below 1,000 RPM smoothly. Valve adjustment was required every few thousand miles, and most owners had no idea how to do it properly or safely. But here's the kicker that surprised even experienced mechanics. The camshaft was so aggressive that it actually hurt low-end torque compared to milder cam profiles. Below 3,000 RPM, the L88 felt slower than the base 300 horsepower small block engine, but above 4,000 RPM, it transformed into an absolute monster that could terrify even experienced drivers. The power curve was unlike anything available in a production car at that time. Horsepower climbed steadily until 6,000 RPM, then exploded to its peak around 6,400 RPM. Like a bomb going off, the engine would willingly rev to 7,000 RPM and beyond, producing a sound that could be heard for miles around. Professional racers loved the power characteristics, but street drivers often complained that the engine was impossible to drive in traffic situations. The cooling system from hell itself. The L88 came with an aluminum radiator that was both advanced and problematic in equal measure. The aluminum construction provided better heat transfer than copper brass radiators, but it also created entirely new problems that nobody anticipated. The dissimilar metals in the cooling system caused galvanic corrosion that would eat through aluminum components in just a few years of operation. The radiator was also smaller than standard because Chevrolet wanted to save weight and improve airflow to the engine compartment. This meant the cooling system ran hot, even under normal driving conditions in moderate weather. Add the deleted heater core, which normally provided additional cooling capacity to the system, and the L88 ran dangerously hot in traffic situations. Many owners discovered this the hard way during their first summer of ownership, when temperatures soared. The aluminum radiator was so prone to problems that most surviving L88s have had their cooling systems completely rebuilt multiple times over the decades. Some owners switched back to copper brass radiators just for reliability reasons. The original aluminum radiators are incredibly rare today because so few survived long enough to become collectible items for restoration enthusiasts. The exhaust system that wasn't included. Here's something that'll blow your mind completely. The L88 came without an exhaust system installed, not a different exhaust system, no exhaust system whatsoever. The mandatory N11 off-road exhaust option consisted of header flanges and nothing else attached. Buyers were expected to install their own racing headers and complete exhaust systems after purchase. This wasn't just about weight savings or cost reduction measures. Chevrolet knew that serious racers would immediately throw away any factory exhaust system and install their own custom setups anyway. By not providing an exhaust system at all, they saved money and weight while ensuring every L88 owner understood exactly what kind of car they'd bought. Most dealers were completely unprepared for this unusual situation. They had customers picking up brand new cars that couldn't legally be driven on public roads without exhaust systems installed first. Some dealers scrambled to install temporary exhaust pipes just so buyers could drive their cars home legally. Others shipped cars to customers on trailers because they were technically not street legal without proper exhaust systems. The lack of exhaust also meant that L88 engines were impossibly loud, even with headers and mufflers installed later by owners. The ignition system from the future itself, the L88, came with mandatory K66 transistor ignition, technology that was literally years ahead of its time period. While most cars still used conventional points and condensers, the L88 featured solid-state ignition that provided consistent spark energy at any RPM level. This was crucial for an engine that regularly operated above 6,000 RPM, where conventional ignition systems would fail miserably. But here's the secret that caused major headaches. The transistor ignition was so advanced that most mechanics had no idea how to work on it properly. Service manuals were written in technical language that made no sense to typical garage mechanics of that era. When the system failed, owners often had to take their cars to Chevrolet dealers who had special test equipment and proper training. The transistor modules were incredibly expensive to replace, costing more than many people made in an entire week. But the system was also incredibly reliable when properly maintained by knowledgeable technicians. The solid-state design eliminated the timing drift and misfiring that plagued conventional ignition systems under high RPM operation. At high RPM, the difference was dramatic compared to conventional systems that would start misfiring above 5,000 RPM regularly. The differential that ate tires alive. Every L88 came with mandatory G81 positraction differential with special gear ratios designed specifically for racing applications. The standard ratio was 373:1, but buyers could order even more aggressive ratios like 410:1 or 456:1 for serious competition. These ratios turned the L88 into an absolute animal off the starting line, but made highway cruising a complete nightmare experience. With 456 gears, the engine would be spinning over 4,000 RPM at 70 miles per hour continuously. Fuel economy with aggressive gears was measured in single digits under any driving conditions. The positraction unit itself was incredibly strong, using special clutch packs and heavy-duty components designed to handle the L88's massive torque output repeatedly. But here's the problem that frustrated many owners. The limited slip differential was so aggressive that it would bind up during parking lot maneuvers, causing the rear tires to scrub and wear prematurely. Many owners burned through expensive rear tires every few thousand miles just from normal driving situations. The differential also required special lubricant and frequent maintenance that most owners completely ignored until catastrophic failure occurred. The weight distribution secret that changed everything. Here's something 99% of Corvette fans don't know about this legendary machine. The L88 had nearly perfect weight distribution thanks to careful engineering of every single component by Chevrolet's best engineers. The aluminum heads and intake manifold moved significant weight forward, while the deleted heater and other equipment removed weight from the rear section. The aluminum radiator and other lightweight components were precisely positioned to achieve optimal balance throughout the chassis. Zora Arkus-Duntov spent months calculating the exact weight and position of every component to achieve his target weight distribution goals. The result was a car that handled unlike any other American performance car of the era or beyond. While most muscle cars were nose-heavy and prone to understeer, the L88 was perfectly balanced and could be controlled with the throttle like a proper European sports car. Professional racers immediately recognized the superior handling characteristics and exploited them to dominate road racing competitions across the country. The weight distribution was so good, many modern sports cars still don't achieve the same level of balance today. This was one of the key factors that made the L88 so incredibly successful in professional competition worldwide. The engine code mystery that reveals everything. The L88 engine carried special identification codes that revealed incredible details about its construction and assembly process. Beyond the obvious L88 designation, there were hidden numbers and letters stamped in various locations that told the complete story of each engine's assembly history. The partial VIN stamped on the engine pad could be cross-referenced with production records to determine the exact date of assembly, the shift that built it, and even which specific technician performed the final inspection procedures. But here's where it gets really interesting for collectors and historians. Some L88 engines carried additional markings that indicated special preparation or testing procedures. Engines marked with an X were allegedly hand-selected and blueprinted for maximum performance by skilled technicians. These special engines were supposedly reserved for factory-supported racing teams and certain VIP customers with connections. The markings were so subtle that most people never noticed them during casual inspection, but knowledgeable collectors pay enormous premiums for engines with these special designations today. Chevrolet officially denies that any L88 engines received special preparation, but the markings tell a completely different story to those who know what to look for. The option that doubled the price overnight. The L88 option cost $947.90, which doesn't sound like much money today, but in 1967, that was equivalent to over $7,000 in today's purchasing power. When combined with all the mandatory options like the M22 transmission, F41 suspension, J56 brakes, and K66 ignition, the total L88 package added over $1,500 to the base Corvette price tag. This nearly doubled the total cost of the car, putting it into exotic sports car territory financially. For comparison, you could buy a brand new Volkswagen Beetle for the cost of just the L88 option package alone. Many potential buyers were genuinely shocked when they saw the final price and walked away immediately. Dealers reported losing numerous sales to customers who thought there had been a mistake on the order sheet calculations. The high price was another intentional barrier Chevrolet used to keep casual buyers away from the L88 option completely. They wanted these cars in the hands of serious racers who understood their true purpose and were willing to pay premium prices for ultimate performance capabilities. The production numbers that don't add up mathematically. Chevrolet claims they built exactly 216 L88 Corvettes from 1967 through 1969 total, 20 in 67, 80 in 68, and 116 in 69 according to official records. But here's where it gets suspicious for researchers and historians. Researchers who have spent decades tracking down every L88 ever built have found evidence of cars that don't appear in official production records anywhere. Build sheets exist for cars that supposedly were never built. According to GM documentation, VIN sequences have unexplained gaps that suggest missing vehicles from the production line. Some collectors believe Chevrolet deliberately underreported production numbers to make the cars seem rarer than they actually were for marketing purposes. Others think there were special builds for factory racing teams that were never officially acknowledged in public records. The most intriguing theory is that some L88 engines were installed in cars after production, either by dealers or the factory itself, creating vehicles that exist physically but don't appear in official records anywhere. What's certain is that more L88 Corvettes survive today than the production numbers would mathematically suggest. The racing homologation requirement that started everything. The L88 existed primarily to meet FIA homologation requirements for international racing competition participation. To compete in events like the 24 Hours of Le Mans, manufacturers had to produce a minimum number of road-going versions of their race cars for public sale. The L88 was Chevrolet's answer to this requirement, providing a street-legal version of their competition engines to the public. But here's the secret that few people understand. The homologation rules required that all the racing components be available as regular production options, not special order items or prototypes. This meant Chevrolet had to offer the L88 package to any customer who wanted to buy one, even though they clearly preferred to sell them only to serious racers with proper credentials. The FIA inspectors actually visited Chevrolet facilities to verify that L88 components were indeed production items and not hand-built racing parts created in secret. This forced forced Chevrolet to maintain expensive production tooling and assembly procedures for components they would have preferred to build in small batches only. The homologation requirement also explains why certain seemingly irrational decisions were made, like the heater deletion and radio prohibition that made no sense for street cars. And there you have it, folks. 20 absolutely shocking secrets about the 1967 L88 Corvette that proved this wasn't just another performance car. It was a thinly disguised race car with license plates attached. From the horsepower ratings that were complete fiction to the fuel requirements that made it nearly impossible to drive on public streets, every single aspect of the L88 was designed to create the ultimate American racing machine for competition. Which of these revelations surprised you the most today? Did you know about the aluminum heads that revolutionized big block performance, or the transmission that was so tough it earned the nickname Rock Crusher? What about the secret mounting points that Zora Arkus Duntov hid in the frame for serious racers to discover? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts about the most legendary Corvette ever built in automotive history. If you enjoyed this deep dive into L88 secrets, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we've got more incredible automotive mysteries coming your way soon. Next week, we're uncovering the hidden truth about the muscle cars that were actually built for NASCAR but sold to unsuspecting customers instead. Until then, keep hunting for those rare L88s, and remember that sometimes the most incredible cars are the ones with the best kept secrets hidden from the world.